Hello, welcome to this tutorial on Introduction to Python. And in this section, we will talk about the Python programming language, Integrated Development Environment IDE, Python 2 version versus Python 3, installing Python using the Anaconda distribution. So Python is a very simple language which is easier to learn, and it has an elegant syntax, so it allows us to think about the problem or solution rather than focusing on the syntax. Next, Python is a high level interpreted language. Programming languages generally fall into one of the two categories: interpreted and compiled languages. So, what is the difference between compiled languages and interpreted languages? A compiler converts a high level language code such as Java, C, or Python to machine code. So, here we have a compiler that converts the source code or the high level language code that is in high level language into machine code. And the compiler translates the code all at once. So all the statements in a program are translated at once, and the processor then executes upon the machine language that the compiler has produced. So here we have the processor that executes the machine code. Now, for example, if you have to make any changes to the code that has already been compiled, say for example, you have added a new statement in the existing code. In that case, the entire program will need to be recompiled. So the process of compilation is slow, but machine code can be executed quickly. And examples of compiled languages are C, and we have COBOL and BASIC. Coming to interpreted languages, an interpreter translates code into machine code. So it translates code into machine code, but in this case we have an interpreter that does this job. So what is the difference between a compiler and an interpreter? The interpreter translates code instruction by instruction. So in your source code, it goes to the first statement and then it translates into machine code. The next step, and in the next step, the CPU executes each instruction. The CPU executes this instruction. So statement 1 has been translated into machine code by the interpreter, and this is executed by the CPU. Next, the interpreter translates the second statement in your program to machine code,
and the CPU executes that particular instruction. So, interpreted code will show an error as soon as it hits a problem. So, it is easier to debug than compiled code. In case of compiled languages, the bugs are reported after the entire program has been compiled. So, since an interpreter translates code into machine code instruction by instruction, they are much slower to execute than the same program that has been completely compiled. However, interpreted languages have usefulness in areas where speed doesn't matter. Say, for example, you can use it for debugging or for training purposes. And examples of interpreted languages include Python, Ruby, Perl. So these are some of the examples for compiled and interpreted languages.
Now let's get back to where we have left Python. And Python is an object oriented language, and it is a free and open source software. You can freely use and distribute Python even for commercial use. Not only can you use and distribute software written in it, you can even make changes to the Python's source code. Next, Python is portable. We can move Python programs from one platform to another and run it without any changes. It runs seamlessly on almost all platforms, including Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Python standard library is very extensive, offering a wide range of facilities. Python provides standardized solution for many problems that occur in everyday programming, and bulk of the library is very portable. Next, Python has a great community that provides support through mailing lists, user contributed documentation, and a very active Stack Overflow group. The next topic is IDE, which is Integrated Development Environment. An IDE is a coding tool which allows you to write, test, and debug your code in an easier way. Technically, you can write your code in a notepad, but your Windows notepad, say for example, does not highlight your syntax, say giving a color code to all the functions that you have defined in your program. And it does not provide debugging tools. And you cannot execute the program directly from notepad application. So you would have to save the file and run the code from command prompt. And for this, you need two different programs. Next, we have the IDLE, which is the Integrated Development and Learning Environment provided with Python. It ideally allows to create, read, edit, and execute your programs under the same roof without touching the command line. Using the IDLE is not a requirement for using Python. There are many other IDEs that can be used to write Python programs. There are also text-based program editors. Using the IDLE is not a requirement for using Python. There are many other IDEs that can be used to write Python programs. For example, there is PyCharm, then Spider, Komodo Edit, Atom, Sublime Text, etc. The IDE is a combination of a text editor and the Python interpreter. As we have just discussed that the IDE can be used to write and test your code. Here I have given a print function to print the text hello world, and then the IDE can also be used to do mathematical operations like addition, subtractions, and so on. And in order to execute these statements, we need an interpreter. In case of the Python programming language, we use the interpreter in order to translate the human readable code to machine code. And the interpreter works in two modes. One is the interactive mode and the other script mode. In the interactive mode, the interpreter gives immediate feedback for each statement. It also stores the output of previously executed statements in active memory. As we enter new statements or as the new statements get executed, the entire sequence of previously executed statements is considered while evaluating the current output. So, what do we mean by this? Say, for example, in our IDE, we enter the first statement, I assign value 2 to the variable A and run the interpreter. The interpreter stores the output of the executed statement in active memory. And then in the second line, I assign the value 3 to the variable B and then run the interpreter again. Next, in the third line, I give a variable C which adds the variables A and B and run the interpreter again. Now, using the print function, I would like to display the value of the variable C. As new statements are executed by the Python interpreter, the entire sequence of previously executed statements is considered while evaluating the current output. And the interactive mode is a good way to play around and try variations on syntax. Coming to the script mode, in the script mode, we give Python a file of statements and the interpreter interprets all of the statements in that script. Interactive mode is great for testing small chunks of code, but there is one problem. The statements you enter in the Python IDE are not saved anywhere. In case you want to execute the same set of statements multiple times, you would be better off to save the entire code in a file, then use the Python interpreter in script mode to execute the code from a file. Now, in order to understand the interactive and script modes, let's go to the Python's IDLE. If you haven't installed Python or any other IDEs yet, we will talk about the Anaconda's Jupyter Notebook shortly, so do not worry. But for now, let's go to IDLE. On the Windows system, go to the Start menu and search for IDLE. In case of Mac OS, go to the terminal window and then type IDLE. So here is the Python's IDLE. The three arrow signs that you see here is called the Python prompt, which means Python is ready to read in a new command by giving us that visual cue. Also, it's Python's way of telling us that we are in the interactive mode. So let's print out some text using the print function. Say hello world. Then hit enter. As soon as I hit enter, the interpreter executed this particular statement. Now, the IDLE can also be used as a calculator. Say, for example, I want to add the numbers, these three numbers. So, the interpreter has added all the three numbers and given us an output immediately. So, this is the interactive mode. The other mode that we have talked about is the script mode or the normal mode. And for that, you need to put all your statements in a file. So for that, go to the file and then say new file. And here I'm going to give a print function. and print script mode. Multiply two numbers. 20 multiplied by 7 will do a division. 34 divided by 9, something like that. And we will save this file. So save your file, script mode underscore test dot py is the extension. Save. Now, in order to execute this file, at the top choose run and go to run module. I have three statements in the file. These are the three statements. I have three statements in the file that I've saved, but I only see the first statement has been output by the interpreter in the script mode. That's because in the script mode, in order to display any text or any statement or expression, any value, in the script mode, if we want to display something, we need to use the print function. This is not required in case of the Python's interactive mode. So now let's go to the same file and use the print function to do the math calculations, and you need to save your file again and then execute it. Now you have all of the statements in the file executed. So this is about the interpreter's modes, interactive and script mode.